Hi there, Louis here. Welcome to Morphus, your partner for change. Today our main topic is how to handle difficult people in our Work Skills for Success series. Had a boss that's difficult to work with? How about a co-worker that is always gossiping behind your back? Or a subordinate that's climbing all over you? Needless to say, we all felt frustrated, annoyed, and were even looking for a way to get back at them. That's why some of us, we set up a duplicate chat group this time without the boss. Or we become defensive while interacting with that co-worker with a loose mouth. Or we find ourselves bending over backwards for our subordinate just so that we don't look like a nasty boss. So one of my toughest experiences in dealing with difficult people is when we hired a promising sales director. From the outset, we knew that he was the aggressive go-getter that would fill the gap in the team. He's very assertive, very strong-willed, and we know that in our team, we lack this kind of person that can drive and make things happen. But little did we know that this aggression, is not only aimed at beating the competition, but in turn, it became an aggression that is turned inwards and even towards our customers. So one of our customers even feedback to us that he received a series of 15 messages and 5 missed calls within a day. And to make things worse, some of the 15 messages that he received contained phrases which were outright rude. So imagine the shock that we receive. We look at our customers and we cannot apologize enough. Because when it comes to Morphus, we respect people, we empower people. So how can we be rude to our customers? So it is really embarrassing to receive such a feedback from the customer. But the key question here is, what to do with such an aggressive sales director? We all have our group of difficult people to face with. And many of us, we take different methods or different ways to dealing with them. Among all the difficult people tasks, there are 5 of them, which I believe most of us will have to, in one way or another, try it out in our workplaces. So one of them is confrontation, another dispute, third, mentoring, fourth, coaching, and fifth, counseling. So before we go into the 5, let us look into why is it so difficult to deal with difficult people. So it is difficult because number 1, emotions are involved. Frustration, irritation, fear, disappointment, these are all complex emotions when it comes to handling difficult people. And on one hand, there is that hope that this person is joining your team, is part of your team. He's supposed to take care of the interests of the team. He's supposed to represent the company in a good, fair, and in good faith. But yet, reality sometimes works the other way around. So really, when it comes to difficult people, the first rule is always to handle our own emotions. Emotions are a critical part. We need to handle them because we are also humans. You may be a boss of a company, and many people look up to you, many people sing praises of you day and night, but at the end of the day, we are still human. And we have emotions, real emotions that need attention. If we fail to validate them, fail to acknowledge that we have emotions, it is very easy for these emotions to spill over into the decisions we are going to make with regards to this person, whether we keep them or not, whether we want to confront them or not, or even in the process of confrontation or counseling, these emotions will just derail the whole process. So what we need to understand is that if we do not appreciate and understand that emotions are at work here, these emotions actually add volatility to an already tense situation. So for some of us, it is not just the emotions of ourselves, but we also need to manage the emotions of the other team members, especially if there are difficult behaviors that need to be addressed as a team. For example, if you are talking about accountability for team performance, you realize it is not just the work of one person. You may be feeling hurt, but what about the rest? Are they also facing frustration when dealing with that person? If yes, then you know you require teamwork to handle this. The whole team must come together to set the boundaries in place, to set the SOPs in place, to be very clear about what we want and what we want out of this relationship. So perhaps it's not just about our own emotions, but also the emotions of the whole team. So if you understand the importance of emotions, then I offer you these 3 steps when you are caught in such a situation. So first, to take a deep breath, ask yourself, how are you? It sounds very simple, but many of us do not really practice this. You know, we find ourselves getting caught up in the emotion rather than acknowledging our emotions and being mindful about it. So by asking yourself, how are you, you will realize that your feelings will be honest with you. Though it may be difficult to find the right words to describe, but your feelings will tell you, I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm lost. You know, the tip here is really to accept your emotions as it is. Okay? Not to deflect them, not to deny them, not to invalidate these emotions, but to appreciate that, yes, my emotions are telling me something that I need to be aware of, something I need to take action about, you know. So, like for some of my clients, when they talk about anger, you know, they may say that, you know, I find myself getting angered easily, you know, I do not know why. And I always remind them, anger is a signal that you care about something. Because if you don't care about that issue at all, would you feel angry? No. You feel anger only because you care about the issue. And as such, anger is a signal for you that there is something about that issue that you cannot quite accept, that you cannot quite deal with. So learn to appreciate it, learn to understand that your emotions are telling you something, and understand that you need to process them. It is like an energy. You know, our emotions are like an energy that we need to work through. We need to process it. We need to let it flow through the right channels. Get it out of the system, process it, and when you're more calm and have a clear head about the issues at hand, then it is time to ask yourself the second question: what do you want? So what do you want out of the situation? What are the conflicting interests that are in play? You know, at a workplace, it's usually not just about you. It's about so many other things. Market condition, customers, interdepartmental tensions, politics. So really, you got to understand, what do you really want? If it's really difficult for you to do, you can try to take a piece of paper, write down pros and cons, you know, of the different situations or the different outcomes that we have. And once you find the answer, now write this answer, circle it down, and start to ask yourself the third question. So what can I do? What can I do? You have to understand, with different people, there's different levels of authority, different boundaries, different workplace cultures. For some cultures, it is okay for open confrontation and open feedback. But for some cultures, perhaps you have to go indirectly. So you've got to understand, what can you do given your certain situation. Of course, it could be as simple as, you know, being very informal, giving that person a call, ask that person down for a meeting, you know, over some drinks, we talk about issues, you know, casually asking, you know, you said this about this issue the other day, you know, what is your rationale? Why do you do such a thing? You know, you send 15 messages to this customer, you know, what are you thinking about? Why don't you tell me what's your rationale? Or it may involve some, you know, difficult people tasks, like I mentioned earlier. You know, those are more formal, like confrontation, dispute mentoring, coaching, or even counseling. So having written down what you could do, then comes how you're going to deal with the uncertainty in dealing with difficult people. So emotions is already one level of complexity when it comes to dealing with difficult people. The next level is the uncertainty that comes with that. You know, it is very difficult, you know, to predict what the other person will do, especially if that party seem to be difficult person. So, you know, sometimes people say trust is being able to predict what the other person would say or do. So when it comes to difficult people, if you cannot predict that, you find that it's really hard to have trust. So without the foundation of trust, it will be even harder to work through issues or to reach the conclusion or the desired goal that you can. So appreciating that then it is important to start to see how we can try to predict what the other person would say or do, how the person will react in that situation, what are some of the interests that the other person will have. Because once you understand that, it is more easy for you to then deal, with this other party. So one of the things that I do with my coaching clients is to give them a perspective that's anchored in reality. Because when we try to understand where the other party comes from, we realize that for most of us in our workplace, we have a tendency to hold unrealistic expectations about the other person. We think that because we are friends, we can be more forthcoming when we talk about business, or perhaps because I helped you in the past means that you must help me in the future. These are good habits to have, good practices to have in life in general, but sometimes reality can be quite harsh. So we need to really know where we stand, when we deal with difficult people. It's not that these people are undesirable at times, but it is also about you need to know exactly what your options are. Your emotions are settled. Now you have to settle the uncertainty that comes with that. So where are you? If you really want to have a goal, you have a desired goal, can you really get there? What's the process like? What are some of the things that could derail the whole process? So when it comes to confrontation, if we do not know where we are, we do not know how the other person can respond, it's really hard to push for an actionable conclusion. It's hard. So what if you confront about this issue? The person can just maybe choose not to appear. The person can choose, to walk away in a heated argument. If we really cannot have a grasp of how the other person will react, you realize that you can't push for actionable conclusion. When it comes to dispute, even you do not know what the other person is thinking about, how can you really agree on the facts on the matter? So that's why for some of my clients, I do encourage them to right from the start, before all these difficult issues sort of appear, do personality profiling, use peaks, have a deep insight on your whole team, understand who they are, understand their personality, understand how they will think, feel, and act, so that when the time comes for you to have a very difficult conversation, you can be more clear in terms of how they will respond. You can reduce the uncertainty because you know that they will think in a certain way, they will act in a certain way. But of course, there will still be that variability and that volatility because of emotions. But that aside, you can understand, try to grasp, gauge how they will respond. So if you want to know more about peaks, you can check out my other videos or even send a message over. So having emotions and uncertainty really makes dealing with difficult people a very difficult thing. But if we can work through our own emotions, we can have clarity over the issues, we can gauge how the person will respond, we can then move on to say, yes, we can learn to then handle the difficult people in our workplaces. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a few difficult people tasks that we can undertake in our workplace, be it confrontation, dispute, mentoring, coaching, or counseling. Of course, like I said, this is just a sampling of the many tasks possible, but these are the things that you could do. So if you look at the 5 behaviors, you realize that in general, you are talking about relationships on different levels. If you talk about confrontation, dispute, they tend to be, where the relationship is a bit more difficult, or you might be going towards even breaking off the relationship in total. And when it comes to mentoring, coaching, counseling, you start to understand that the relationships are important and you want to preserve them. You want to preserve that working relationship. That's why you go for that aspect. So regardless, these are the 5 tasks that you could undertake when it comes to dealing with difficult people. So confrontation, what it is? In essence, it is actually entering into an argument that will have to conclude with a decision and action plan. So here is when you learn conflict management skills. You have to apply that. You have to understand your own conflict management styles. Are you a person that will withdraw when it comes to conflict and avoid conflict? Or are you a person that only pushes for your own agenda and not consider win-win? So you've got to understand, what skills to use, what method to use, how the other person will respond. For workplaces, of course, a lot of times we talk about win-win, being the best outcome, right? So here is where perhaps in different situations you might need to see it differently, because like I said, it's not just about your interest. It could be about interest for the whole organization, and that is where perhaps your agenda needs to go ahead rather than just looking at win-win, right? But ultimately, you need to understand which conflict management style you are more attuned towards, and which conflict management styles you might tend to even avoid, because those styles might be the style that you need at that time. And if you don't have the skills to do it, you find that it's very hard to reach an actionable plan with a confrontation. So talking about confrontation, one of the things that we have to look out for is to learn how to keep track of the desired goals, because there are many things that could throw you off track in the whole process. So what is the desired goal, be it for yourself or on behalf of the team, is then important. So next, when it comes to dispute, it is essentially a question about what is factual and valid. So it has to do with finding what are the perspectives that we hold in common and understanding where we differ. So in the process, it is important to maintain a listening ear and try to see things from the other person's perspective. So here is where in disputes, it's important to spend time listening, explaining, engaging. You talk to them, explain, and of course to listen. Because when you're able to listen, see things from the other person's perspective, that is where you can try to see, okay, so what is the fact and what are opinions? Because when you can discern between them, like the facts is 15 messages are being sent and 5 missed calls were being given to my customer, that is the fact. And of course, the opinion of the customer is that the customer is very unpleasant, feels very unpleasant about this whole engagement, feels that we are too pushy. So if that's the case, this is the facts of the case. So from your perspective, why do you do this? Why do you want to call and send message and each message is more rude than the previous one? So why? So if your emotions are not managed well here, you realize that it's very easy to spill over. That whole process become one that has a lot of frustrations, anxiety, and even anger. But if we are able to manage our emotions right on the onset, you realize that when it comes to dispute, it is much easier for us to handle the dispute, to find out what are the facts, right, and to sort out what are the truths versus the untruths, the facts versus the opinions. So when it comes to mentoring, coaching, and counseling, actually they are quite similar in the sense that they are more developmental in focus. That means it immediately sets the tone that we treasure this relationship that we have and we want to make things work. Whether is it a change in behavior for yourself or the other party, the underlying concept is let's try to make things work. So the fundamental question we need to ask before we go into mentoring, coaching, or counseling is to ask ourselves whether we want to keep this relationship and why. When we have a good answer that we want to keep this relationship, then we can go into coaching, mentoring, and counseling. Otherwise, it will be a waste of effort and we will end with a bitter sense of betrayal, because you spend all your effort, your time, you find you counsel that person, you coach that person, but end up the person will just walk away. So you've got to really be very clear, both for yourself and from the other party's point of view, why you want to treasure this relationship. Once that is clear, then you can go into mentoring, coaching, and counseling. You talk about trying to develop that person's skill set. Maybe the person is not very, has certain developmental gaps, right? In terms of customer service, in terms of talking to peers. If that's the case, then you talk about mentoring and coaching them. Okay, so with that, what are some of the difficult people that you have dealt with? How have you been dealing with them? I welcome you to share with us your experience and let us learn and grow together. So till then, See you next time.